And the first thing, the big elephant in the room, the big thing that will determine what we do with our weekends. Now, I personally am not going to go see Captain America tonight. Today is my Valentine's Day because I work tomorrow, and then I work Saturday, and then I work Sunday. So I think me and my wife are going to try to go Monday to see Captain America, most likely. But I have struggled. if I wasn't trying to do this channel, I don't know if I would go, because this score is not making me feel too good, guys. It is not making me feel very good at all. And right now, if you haven't heard the Rotten Tomato score, which, funny enough, it's going to be interesting to see the way the audience view it versus the way the critics are viewing it. But right now, it's at a 51%. It is 51% on Rotten Tomatoes right now. And we always know that when the reactions come out, which yesterday we covered people's reactions, you know, there was definitely some mixed reactions, but some people were actually kind of positive about it, which kind of surprised me. And then there were some people that are always positive about these movies that were a little negative. So I was like, dang, like, what does this actually mean? Well, a lot of people weren't very happy with it. Now, if you don't understand how Rotten Tomatoes works, Rotten Tomatoes is just a percentage of those critics saying if it was good or bad. So the critics could have said it was a 5 out of 10 or maybe a 6. You know, they could say it's a 6 out of 10, which is like not a great movie, but it's better than a 5. It might be seen as fresh, but, you know, they give it like a 5. And since they give it a 5 or lower, it's seen as rotten. And so it's not necessarily saying it's the worst film in the world. All it's saying is that about 51% of the critics that have reviewed this movie have said it's not very good. But that also means that if 51% said it's not very good, that means 49% that it's said that it's good, at least somewhat. So there is hope for this movie. You know, you may go in and really, really enjoy it. But everything I've heard about the movie, it seems that the criticisms of it are correct, which makes you wonder, what does that mean for this film and the future of Marvel movies? Now, I do think this was a butt kicking that Marvel needed. If it does well or doesn't do well, I think this was a hard lesson for Marvel to learn, because they've definitely done things that are not very professional. Now, we actually have an article that I want to go over and talk about that deals with just that. But I kind of find it annoying because the article itself is, to be honest with you, highly politicized. Highly politicized. So I'm going to try to keep it not as political as possible, but there is going to be elements of this that I'll have to talk about because the writer of it, you know, decides to shove it in there when really it really has not very much to do with it. Not very much to do with it at all. And so the article kind of talks about the mess, you know, the mess that they're in when it comes to the Marvel movies and how they, you know, how this specific movie was made. And that basically this was a movie that was almost like it was doomed from the start. And so we're going to get into it a little bit. But like I said, I'm going to try to avoid certain things, but then there's certain elements of it we're just going to have to talk about, and then we'll just quickly move on from, because I know that not all of us just want to sit around. And especially when we're talking about Captain America, we're talking about movies, we don't want to, and this is a thing for journalists too, guys. You know, we get the write things about movies, and maybe you want to work for CNN, or maybe you want to work for some of this stuff, but we don't really want to hear about your politics when it comes to these movies. We just want to hear about the movie. A lot of things this author wrote in here, this journalist wrote in here about why he thought the movie would do bad politically, has nothing to do with the movie. He even says that the Red Hulk, and he even writes Red Hulk, but then he says that it looks like an orange, you know, he's painted orange to try to make it a connection to Trump. And it's like, dude, like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? It has nothing to do with any of this. But anyway, that said, some people came out that worked on the movie and said, hey, we knew that this was going to have some issues. And not only about the director, but how they were constantly changing things. Like, are we going to have the Serpent Society leader as a villain in the movie or not? They would go and say, yes, we're going to. And then they would go, no, we're not going to. And so they were constantly changing their decisions, constantly changing what they wanted from the movie. And let me see if I can find specifically one of the things that he talks about. That's getting all the politics. We're going to avoid all that. Yeah, they were saying that Harrison Ford was really hard to work with, which, you know, love the dude, but yeah, no surprise, Harrison Ford is hard to work with. We've all known this. This is not a secret. And it says, compounding matters, Ford, now 82, lived up to his reputation as a legendary curmudgeon on set, according to the source, making matters more difficult for Ona, an acclaimed independent filmmaker, but one, like so many hired by Marvel, with zero experience directing within the trappings of a 9-figure budget. Marvel and Ona declined to comment. A representative for Ford did not respond to Vulture's request for comment. Which, yeah, why would he? He wouldn't want to say that he was hard to work with. So a source close to the production said that there is no truth to allegations that Ford's behavior was unusually challenging. So was he challenging? Was he not? Did that affect the reshoots? Maybe it did. Maybe it did. You know, and here's what gets interesting, because they acted like the reshoots weren't that big of a deal. Clearly they were. Clearly they were. They're talking about how they reshot for like 22 days. 22 days, guys. I worked on the reshoots. I think everyone on the crew knew this is probably not going to be a good film. Some of the action sequences were not believable. We had a lot of frustrations on set. After principal photography was finished, it was like, oh, we're going to introduce the leader of the Serpent Society. It was on then and it was off. Then it was on again. That's very expensive to do. Which goes into the whole, this only cost $180 million. How do we really believe that? Like, how do we really believe that it only cost $180 million? I personally am finding that a little hard to believe. You know, that was a big report, the Hollywood Reporter, you know, that they were saying that the other, you know, budget was a lie. I think we're going to come out and find out that that other budget was probably actually factual, because I don't see how you film all these things, change or constantly changing stuff. That's hard on the people that are doing all the special effects with the CGI and stuff. You have to plan those things out to make sure that those things look really good. And if you don't, you're talking about paying guys overtime to make sure that the new ideas you have look good. So that's, you know, it is expensive. It's expensive to do all that. And then you're paying all the people on set to stay, all your production. My coworkers who spent more time on Brave New World than I did said, yeah, this has been a really rough production. Let's see if there's certain things that I want to point out. Here's him talking about politics again. Let's try to avoid that. But they were talking about how there's a divided fan base. And yes, there is a divided fan base, and some of it has been the fault of Marvel. Marvel's definitely done things that have warded off a lot of people because they just don't want to participate or deal with some of the nonsense. This part I have to call out, though, because this is just silly. The journalist that wrote this is just a silly person, I feel like. People are conspiracy theorists. Some people think the original title, The New World Order, means Jews run the world. And now there's a war going on. It's like all these things that were not predicted when Cat 4 was given the production green light were coming to fruition. Trump, the war in Gaza, the tension in America right now. Now, I'm going to split some of that up, okay? This is the only political part we're really going to talk about, okay? Now, am I saying that there's some losers that thought that New World Order meant Jews run the world? I'm sure there was. I'm sure there's some losers out there that personally thought that, okay? But if we're being honest, okay? If we're being honest, unlike this journalist, okay? You have the Klaus Schwabs and all those people, they get together, you know, these elite people get together at the World Economic Forum, and they're constantly talking about how they want to subject people to their new world order, okay? And this is not me saying conspiracy things. This is what they say when they're there. And they talk about things that the average person would not want to have to deal with for their daily lives, okay? I think that's the easiest way to explain that, to say that without getting overly political. It's just something that those people say. And guess what? A lot of the people in America and across the world don't really care about rich people telling them how they're going to make this new world order and how they're going to this and this and this. And a lot of people aren't a fan of the World Economic Forum. And it has nothing to do with Jewish people, for example. And so, yeah, it was a lame title, because that was something when that title came out, actually. That was during COVID. That was during that book. I actually have the book. I have Klaus Schwab's book right here. The Great Reset, okay? Where he talks about the New World Order, where you will own nothing and you will be happy, okay? That's why people were annoyed with the New World Order title. That's why it was a bad title, because there's losers like this who believe in weird things that are really rich and powerful that talk about weird stuff. And people find it weird. That's why. That's why. And it has nothing to do with the Jews. Okay? So let's just get that out of the way. The next thing is, now there's a war going on, and it's like all these things were not predicted when Cat 4 was given the production green light, which is true. You're working on a Cat movie, and now you're having this situation in Gaza that's really, really, really difficult. Now, blaming Trump for that, I think, is a little silly, and I think it's a little unfair, because, this happened when he was not president, and we'll see what happens after. But ironically enough, with the Gaza situation, okay, and after we talk about this, I think we're going to be done talking about all the political stuff. Ironically enough, I was on Twitter yesterday, and I'm going through someone who had like a fan account of, Anthony Mackie's version of Captain America, Sam Wilson, Captain America. And they were talking about how they were not going to go see the movie. And this is someone who has a fan account who wants to go see the movie. And, well, let me rephrase. They said they were going to go see the movie, but they were complaining about the actress that they put in that's actual Marvel character. That is, I believe, an Israeli Marvel character, Sabra. She's going to be in the movie. And so we have this Jewish actress that's going to be in the movie. And I started going through the Twitter comments, okay? And there's so many people that were saying that they weren't going to go see this movie because she was in the movie. Now, I think that's a really silly thing. You don't know what every single person's opinions are about things. And what's funny is he's bringing up the Jew run the world comment, but there's a lot of people that weren't going to go see the movie because of the Gaza situation, and basically blaming this one actress for that because she's a Jewish actress. So I think that's a little unfair. I think that's a little silly, but there are people, funny enough, for this journalist to make this political, there are people who won't see this movie because of politics. And I promise you, it's not the right-leaning side that's not going to see this movie necessarily over politics, unless you're extremely, extremely preachy, and choosing preachiness and message over the actual story that you're presenting. Because most people can handle a lot of stuff as long as you put the story first. So anyway, politics over. I think we're out of that. We are good and clear to move on from that conversation of that part. And so, I think a lot of this is just the writer has to fill in some things. But let me get past all this. Oh, it does talk about Harrison Ford's plane crash. And I totally forgot that was kind of maybe dealing during the time from, filming this movie. Wow, okay. It's like, let me back. Okay. We have to suit up at 80-something. Okay, wait, hold on. I'm just going to start from the beginning. Harrison Ford was one of the crankiest performers I've ever dealt with, which was sad. I'm a fan, but he was very much a diva. I don't know if you remember, but he got in a plane crash. He couldn't even raise his left arm above his chest. That's rough. We have to suit up an 80-something Harrison Ford in these motion capture dots. To me, it seemed like he hated it and didn't want to do it. Probably didn't. And when Harrison was done, he was done. Everyone was trying to scramble to make him happy. That made for a very awkward work environment. And I can imagine trying to work with this older guy who probably shouldn't really have to be working anymore. At least shouldn't be doing movies like this, okay? It's kind of crazy. I know they got Harrison Ford because he's the big famous guy, but I'm kind of surprised they didn't go with a younger actor who could play an old man for a longer period of time, which we're going to get into that ironically when we get into the television portion of the show. But it's just kind of interesting. That's interesting to me. And then we'll just read this last part and then we'll be done with it. It says, reshoots are a part of making any movie like this with a big budget, but this isn't Marvel's first rodeo. Entire sequences we shot won't make it into the film, and that's very expensive. I'm not going to go say the director was not equipped to handle that production. Basically, dealing with A-list egos was the issue. It was mainly just Harrison Ford, so that was a little disappointing. At the end of the day, it was the most tense Marvel shoot I've ever worked on. Everyone kind of felt their buttholes tightening a little bit. It's like, ugh. Which, here's the thing. You can blame Harrison Ford for being complicated, but this isn't like the situation where The Rock was filming Red One and then wasn't showing up to set. It doesn't sound like that's the issue. It just sounds like this guy was a cranky old man who still did his job, but was a cranky old man about it. You know, that doesn't raise your budget of your movie, you know? And it sounds like he likes his director, so he's not trying to poo-poo on him, but he is calling out the fact that, you know, this was a very expensive movie, and there's a lot of things they shot that aren't going to make it in. And, you know, that's partly to do with the director, but you know what it also is partly due to? The way that Marvel shoots these movies. There's a reason, we've had this conversation before, but there's a reason that Blade is not going to come out. We're not going to see Blade. At least the version of Blade that they've been trying to shoot. Blade is not happening in the way that we were planning on seeing Blade. And one of the big reasons why is because they greenlight things without finished scripts. They start the filming process before scripts are even finished. What do you think's gonna happen, man? Like, what do you think's gonna happen? Like, where do you think this is gonna go, man? Like, this isn't rocket science, right? Like, this is not rocket science. This is pretty understandable stuff. You know, like, I don't think I could go make a blockbuster film, okay? I'm not going to act or pretend that I could do that. I don't know if I could, but I doubt I could, okay? I'll put myself a little lower, humble myself. I don't think I could. But I will say this. I feel like there's some basic, you know, observations that anyone could make to help them not set themselves up for failure, right? And for some reason, Marvel's forgetting that. And I've brought up this thing about the rule of two. You know, I think a lot of these big studios need to come up with a rule of two, which is the same thing what DC Studios is doing. You get someone who's creatively knowledgeable, and then you get someone who is business knowledgeable. And then you go forth and you work on these movies. I think we're going to see if it's going to be tried and true for DC, but I do think it will. And I think not just these video game companies, movie companies, all these people, they need someone behind their back help supporting them. Kevin Feige, you know, we gave a lot of praise for Kevin Feige, but Kevin Feige had that with, you know, Joss Whedon and James Gunn and Jon Favreau. These guys were coming in, helping touch up scripts that had already been written, making films much better, right? They came in and made films way better than they originally were. And having that support that helps guide your films and helps give you a plan for the next 10 years is super, super important. And I think Kevin Feige, you know, it seems like he's maybe learning that lesson, because we've talked about this before, but the Russo brothers, after they film Avengers, they may be really involved with future Marvel films, specifically overseeing some of the X-Men titles. You know, if it's true, if it's not, we don't know yet, but I think it would be wise. I think it would be wise for Kevin Feige to have people under him to help guide these things, to make sure that there's actually a plan, right? There's actually a plan. And then the system itself that they have is so well built, it would take care of itself as long as you have that plan in place and you don't shoot things before scripts are finished. I don't think that's too much to ask. I think that's pretty realistic for us. But anyway, I think we need to move on from this topic. We've been on it for quite a bit, but I'm curious for you guys, those that are watching, are you still going to go see Captain America, Brave New World? Is it something you're still excited about? Like I said, when we were talking about the Rotten Tomato score, 51% of critics are saying they didn't like it. But that still means that 49% of critics said they like it. So now liking it might be a 6 or a 10, but they're still saying they liked it. So I'll be seeing it Monday. I wish I could have saw it today, but I can't. And I am working on the weekend, so I'll have to miss out till Monday. But guys, those who are going to go see it, hey, comment down below here if you saw it. Let me know what you think, and it'll help, set my expectations, accordingly. Okay? Hey guys, thanks for watching a short clip from a much longer show that we've been doing on this channel. If you would like to see the full show, just go down the description and click the link. Thanks, guys.